in the years that went by, and it's important for us to revive that growth story.
Can 3G and 4G services in India provide sustainable growth for telecom operators in India? A panel discussion on charting a new course for 3G and 4G services and an award ceremony celebrating the movers and shakers of the telecom sector. Only on ET Now.
Brought to you by Global, endless possibilities.
क्रिकेट हो या लाइफ, जब तक बल्ला चल रहा है ना, ठाठ है बेटा।
बिरला सन लाइफ इंश्योरेंस के वेल्थ विद प्रोटेक्शन सॉल्यूशंस, जिंदगी के उतार चढ़ाव में जियो विश्वास के साथ।
They've helped millions of investors make profitable trades in the market. Their daily advice will help you make the right trading calls. India's top technical analysts appear only on ET Now. Always thinking markets.
Welcome back. Still tuned into Markets. And so we certainly tempered off from the high point of the day and currently high by just about 6 points on the index at 5437, 18,031 on the Sensex. The breadth still seems to be in favor of the gaining side. Let's find out how we should approach this market on a fundamental basis. We've got with us Avinnash Gorakssakar, founder, director and moneyinvestments.in joining in. Start off with Avinnash, given that all of the news flow, be it from the global markets and even domestically, hasn't been all that positive, we have still seen a good rally sustained for our Indian markets on account of the kind of fund flows that we're seeing. How should you approach the market in light of this?
I think clearly in the short term, I think global events, including yesterday's event as well as today's Fed meeting, would drive the markets. Going forward, my thinking is that probably if the market runs up to levels of roughly about 5480, 5500, I think clearly that would be a point where one should actually exit and possibly take some cash off the table. As far as the stocks are concerned, I would still prefer to get into most of the blue chips, stocks like pharma, typically a Cipla or maybe even a Tata Motors. Clearly, I think from the mid cap space, I think one needs to be a little careful because clearly on news flow, stocks go up, come down. But from the market perspective, at least in the near term, if today we do get a QE3 kind of indication or an announcement, I think at least for the shorter term, the market trend will be up. Probably 5500 would be a point where, probably some sort of consolidation and profit booking should be advised.
Okay, that's the word which is coming in on the overall markets. And given that today we are having the crucial meet this time around for a fuel price hike, should we expect anything concrete, or once again do you think there's going to be a deferment? And how do you expect oil marketing companies to react?
No, I think it's a hide and seek game. I think sometimes, we hear that the government is keen to, increase prices of diesel and petrol. I think last weekend, there was an announcement expected. I think it got deferred, and again we have a meeting this week. So I would say that, it's 50-50. If an announcement does come in, I think markets should be more than pleasantly happy if a diesel price hike comes. A petrol price hike is given, considering the fact that, it's not controlled anymore. So I think clearly on the diesel price hike, if the government does take this policy action, I think the markets would give it a thumbs up. Otherwise, my sense is this would be another, event which probably the market would just pass off.
Sure. So, Avinnash, just talking about this hide and seek that you spoke of, how are you viewing aviation stocks? Because it's been the same story where the aviation minister comes out, I think, every 2 to 3 weeks and says that we are seriously looking at FDI and then nothing happens.
George, again, the question is, I think, this sector requires foreign capital immensely. If you look at a Jet or maybe a Kingfisher, SpiceJet, I think all these stocks have actually been moving up in the last few days purely on the fact that FDI is possibly going to happen, if not a full 51%, at least up to 49%. I think clearly here also the government requires to have a consensus between all its alliance partners, and before it does, I think it's really difficult to expect that, this sort of landmark judgment actually is given off. In the shorter term, I think clearly, these stocks would go up purely on news flows, but from a fundamental perspective, I would still say that, it's still a long way before we could see good amount of profitability levels from most of the players. In fact, even for a SpiceJet or for a Jet, which actually showed good numbers in the Q1, to sustain those profitability levels going forward is going to be a tough task.
And how would you approach the media space now, given that the cabinet has come across yesterday and said that it may mull FDI cap hike in cable TV services from the 14th of this month? You have got most of the counters which are holding up very smartly.
No, I think again, hopefully if this is, approved, and then it actually becomes a legislative law, my sense is I think these stocks would definitely give a pop-up, at least in the short term. I think you will probably see most of the media listed companies, gaining possibly traction in the short term. I think this is also a news flow which obviously needs to be, approved and actually implemented, because quite often we have seen that these kind of announcements do come, but then the stock actually, waters down when the, when the legislation actually doesn't go away. So I would say here in this space, maybe a Z or maybe, typically a TV today, stocks like NDTV, I think clearly all companies are waiting for this guideline so that they could possibly, attract foreign capital.
Sure. And Avinnash, just looking at the financial pack and within that NBFCs, would you say there's value in some of these stocks because there's been this, maybe an unwanted scare that has been, that exists based on the revised regulations that are going to come for NBFCs, and many of these stocks have got beaten down. Do you see value in any of them?
George, actually within the NBFC space, I think probably something like typically a Shriram Transport, something like a Reliance Capital, or even for that reason the gold financing companies. I would say that these are typically stocks where the business model is pretty strong. And especially on the gold financing space, markets report suggest that there is some, Rao committee report which has already been made to the RBI, and this report has not yet been made public. But clearly, I think in the gold financing space, whatever policy tightening measures were done have been completed. So here possibly both a Muthoot and Manappuram possibly also look good. But clearly from a medium to longer term perspective, these may not be stocks which actually may move, in the immediate short term.
Any beaten down names that you see a little bit of flavor coming back in?
I would say the capital goods space, hopefully, I think clearly, stocks like maybe a Thermax or typically an IIP Infra, or maybe even from the larger cap space, L&T. I think, this is a beaten down sector where I think numbers have not been all that great. But if anybody wants to take a contrary call and wait for a couple of quarters, I think hopefully from the second half of this financial year, my guess is that once the IIP numbers start showing better traction and we see some sort of visibility on the policy reforms, I think this is one sector where possibly you could see a good bounce.
So Avinnash, just very quickly, what would your top stock picks across sectors be?
From the large cap, George, we like Tata Motors and Cipla. I think Cipla has been beaten down today. I think some news about some drug policy expected in the coming 2 weeks. But if you look at the business model for Cipla as well as for Tata Motors, both the stocks are available at decent valuations. In fact, the Q1 numbers have been pretty strong. So I think from both Cipla as well as Tata Motors, I would say that, roughly about 10 to 12% upside for both these stocks.
Avinash, thanks very much for taking the time out and appreciate you giving us all of that fundamental perspective on the show. Let's listen in to another prominent voice. Mahesh Nandurkar of CLSA believes that the investment cycle is in a downturn. It would take a while before the upturn kicks in. He recommends private sector banks and specific power sector oil and gas stocks to have in one's portfolio.
Most of the capital-intensive businesses or corporate houses that drove up the investment cycle to start with are now in a risk-averse mode, and they are trying to contract the balance sheet by selling off assets, raising private equity, and so on. So this process of deleveraging also will be the other time-consuming factor, and which is the reason why we believe that the investment upturn is still some time away, and therefore still too early to jump into some of the stocks in the industrial space. ICICI Bank and Axis Bank in the private banking space. And then on the defensive side, I would say Power Grid, which is the T&D utility. We also like BPCL, that's the oil and gas company, state-owned oil and gas company, which is transforming its business from downstream to upstream now. And we also like Lupin, that's been our top pick from the healthcare sector. It's been nearly 5 years that Reliance, the large cap name, has been an underperformer. Having said that, we believe that a lot of negative news is already in the price, and possibly some positive things can drive the performance going forward, which would include things such as a possibility of some revival in the gas production in its KG-D6 basin. No matter what happens to the taxation levels, the earnings growth of around 16 to 18% is almost like a given. And in the current environment where there has been a lot of uncertainty around various other sectors and other stocks, ITC clearly stands out.
All right, let's take it back to Rajat Bose, who's going to identify his top trading ideas for us.
I have 3 intraday buy calls. One is Tata Motors, stop below 258 and a target of 264.90. Tata Steel with a stop below 385 and target would be 396. And JSPL 339.80 is your stop loss and a target of 348.
Okay, those are some of the trading calls that Rajat is recommending. Thanks very much, Rajat, for joining in. We take a quick break right here on Market Sense, but coming up after the break, the European markets prepare to open ahead of the crucial Fed Reserve decision. We keep you up to speed in just a bit.
Opportunity comes knocking every minute on ET Now. ET Now gives you more stock ideas from the best technical analysts every day and talks to the management of the most promising companies. Breaking stories that impact your investments. Make every opportunity a profit opportunity from 8 to 10:30 a.m. only on ET Now.
मेरा स्टेट बैंक डेबिट कार्ड कहाँ गया? यहाँ क्या कर रहे हो?
मुझे नहीं अंदर आना।
क्यों?
तुम्हें हर रोज सिर्फ कद्दू खिलाए जाए तो
बोर हो जाऊंगा।
तो मैं भी हर रोज सिर्फ एटीएम आके बोर हो गया हूँ।
अच्छा, तो और कहाँ ले जाऊँ तुम्हें?
जब तुम मुझे शॉपिंग, मूवीज, रेस्टोरेंट, ऑनलाइन ऐसी कई जगह यूज कर सकते हो, तो सिर्फ एटीएम ही क्यों?
स्टेट बैंक डेबिट कार्ड एक, खुशियाँ अनेक। अब स्टेट बैंक डेबिट कार्ड को SBI POS टर्मिनल पर स्वाइप करने पर कस्टमर और मर्चेंट दोनों पा सकते हैं कैशबैक। शर्तें लागू।
Cloud computing has transformed IT in enterprises. What are its real implications and possibilities? Presenting cloud computing from hype to reality.
You buy an infrastructure for a specific application, you needed another application, you bought another set of infrastructure. That's how IT has always been. Keep growing.
A panel discussion on demystifying cloud computing only on ET Now.
Presented by NetMagic. Powered by EMC.
Shri Ram City Union Finance Limited offers to the public secured entities of rupees 250 crores with an option to retain oversubscription up to rupees 250 crores. The issue rated CARE AA by CARE and CRISIL AA minus stable by CRISIL with annualized returns up to 11.75% per annum. Allotment on first come first served basis. Issue opens on 12th September 2012.
डीलक्स रूम है सर जी, जकूजी बाथरूम में सर जी।
GoIBO.com है ना?
Book hotels directly on GoIBO.com. Save money.
GoIBO.com. क्या?
सुन। हाँ बोल।
तू दयाल बाबू का बेटा है?
कौन दयाल बाबू?
To the new look, Verizon. Open your trading day with technical calls from the market wizards who have made money for millions of investors. And as markets close, let India's biggest technical analysts show you winning stock picks for the markets tomorrow. Only on ET Now.
Welcome back. You're watching Market Sense. All eyes across global markets on Washington, where the US Federal Reserve's two-day meeting ends tonight. And the street is expecting that Ben Bernanke may signal further bond buying by the US Federal Reserve. The FOMC may discuss the launch of a new quantitative easing program to boost the US economy. Now, remember, Bernanke in his Jackson Hole speech just some time back had indicated that if economic data continues to be weak, then the Fed would intervene. And last week, softer than expected US non-farm payrolls data has increased hopes that some easing measures will be launched this week, and that's exactly what the street is waiting for. Now, again, there's been so much expectation priced into the market for a QE3. You've seen stocks run up very strongly. You've seen commodity classes run up strongly. Brent crude trading at about $116 a barrel. That if QE3 is not announced tonight, and indications are given that it is going to come to market, maybe after the November presidential elections, you will see a broad-based sell-off across various asset classes, and that's what markets somewhere at the back of their minds are worried about. But I just have to see what the outcome of that meeting is, whether indeed QE3 will be announced today. But Europe should open any moment now, and it's nervousness really that's going to grip the markets until that announcement comes. It's going to be pretty much the same story when Wall Street opens later this evening. So there you have it. The markets in Europe are those are futures, so that's the Paris futures. Marginally in the green, it's up about 0.1%. The DAX in Frankfurt flat really, and so is the case with London, where the market is really flat. It's opened as we speak. That's the FTSE in London, very marginally in the red. Frankfurt should open in a few